The best bits of Joy Drive.
Theatre, film, TV and more. Suzy Wrong reviews it all on Joy Drive with Em and Warren.
Good afternoon, Suzy Wrong.
Good afternoon, Warren. I just saw online that one of my favourite shows that we covered last year, Interview with the Vampire, remember that one?
Oh, yes, I saw it's back.
Yeah, it's available on ABC iView now. So for those people who didn't have that platform that we were talking about last year, you can see for free now if you're in Australia on iView, and I highly recommend it. It's a great one.
Is it another series or just the same series?
It's the same one. It's just that now it's on ABC so everyone can watch it.
Fantastic. Now, Suzy, today we are talking about The Inspection. I watched it over the weekend. Did you see it? Mm-hmm. Well, I suppose you wouldn't turn up here.
I actually saw it quite a while ago. I just love it so much, and I've been waiting to talk about the show on this program.
What's it about?
Ellis French was kicked out of home at 16 by a mother who simply could not deal with the idea of her son being gay. When we meet Ellis at 25, he is tired of being homeless and aimless and decides to join the Marines to get his life together and to win back his mother's love. The Inspection is a true story written and directed by Elegance Bratton, who proves himself a formidable filmmaker in this semi-autobiographical work, his very first feature film, one that is far more accomplished than many others made by people with decades in the business. The Inspection, which opened at Australian cinemas on Friday, is beautiful, thoughtful, meaningful, powerful, a real work of art that feels as original as it is compelling viewing. Ellis's experiences as an African-American recruit undergoing the toughest training tells a story of homophobia and racism, as well as camaraderie and spiritual exaltation in a system and environment that is simultaneously noble and inhumane. The film benefits greatly from the honest storytelling, drawing from many incidents and events that demonstrate all the grey areas between brutality and kindness from the perspective of a young black man. There are a lot of inconvenient truths here to grapple with, along with the many mixed feelings that The Inspection elicits from the viewer. In Bratton's work, we find so much compassion for those who have done reprehensible things. If he can find understanding and sometimes forgiveness for these people, who are we to judge too harshly? The actor Jeremy Pope is the star of the film, who was shockingly not given a nomination at the Oscars. In fact, The Inspection received 0 nominations, which is completely shameful. A real missed opportunity that could have helped elevate some very promising and important queer and black artists. Warren, I'm so glad to have this opportunity to spread the word about The Inspection. I trust it's inspired a few thoughts on your part.
Oh, absolutely. I found it really chilling to watch, even though, it's I suppose it's not that cinematic as a film as such, but it's chilling, absolutely chilling to watch. And it made me think when I was watching it, Suzy, is I suppose it depends on our experiences of what we've had as members of the LGBTIQA plus community. But for me, I was watching it and it transported me right back to PE classes at high school immediately. And it just shows that I think when we do watch these films, we need to be a little bit careful and a little bit kind to ourselves, that we don't sort of get re-triggered on things that happened when we were growing up, or if we've had similar experiences. Admittedly, not the military and not to that degree, but it still can transport you back. Did you find it did anything like that with you, Suzy?
I went to national service in Singapore, so I actually had sort of similar experiences. I don't think anything that terrible had happened. Because we weren't trained by sort of professional army men.
Right.
We were trained by other people who were also serving national service, so they weren't kind of too serious about it. But there was a lot of taunting. There was a lot of they would use their power, their little bit of power they have, to sort of I guess be a little bit humiliating on you. I remember a lot of kind of humiliating situations where I had to just swallow my pride and just count the hours until it's bedtime, sort of thing. But probably nothing quite as serious as in this film. It's interesting that you talk about the triggers, and I think I felt myself quite comfortably watching. I don't know what that means. I think we are so used to seeing these stories now. It's not as though I needed to be to sort of be extra strong to cope with the story. I just felt like it's such an automatic response when we watch these stories, to feel like, you have to kind of block your emotions a little bit.
I think it's that homophobic hatred that, there's homophobia, and then there's this one that's filled with hatred, and that's what I noticed in the film. I thought there was some really, Jeremy Pope as Alice French, what a great performance. I agree with you. I think there was such a missed opportunity there with the awards. And the other thing that stood out for me is the need to please our parents, and the extent that we go to, needing the approval of love from, I suppose, those who are responsible to give it to us. And essentially that's what Alice was doing, wasn't he? He was going to get his mum's approval, which of course, really didn't come.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, does it ever end, this need for approval? And sometimes I think maybe it's just something that is part of our nature. I think if you don't have that kind of love that you feel, that most people, that I guess everyone feels that they need from their parents, and if you have that sort of missing in your life, I'm assuming and imagining that is a lifelong search. For me, it's a little bit like that. I have a strained relationship with my father, but because we live in different countries, different continents, I guess it manifests differently. But I do think that, how much do I crave for that, like in my daily actions, the things that I do, and how much do I have at the back of my head think about, is he going to approve? Would he be proud of me if I did that? And sometimes I feel like, he hasn't been in my thoughts for a long time, but sometimes it pops up in my head thinking that, I wish he would love me more or something, which I guess is similar to what happens in the story in the film.
Suzy, and you don't have to answer this, it's a very personal question, so feel free not to, but how did your parents react to you having to do military service in Singapore?
That is so interesting, because when I had gone to the army, I was like 19 or something, so I wasn't out at all. But I had by then been reading a lot of material from the US and the UK that I had been able to get mailed in the post. So I had become sort of quite well read in terms of gay literature and gay activism of that time, in the mid 90s. So I had become slightly militant, and I knew that the question would come up when you went for your sort of medical check. They call it a medical check, I think, before you actually start national service. And part of it is a psychological screening, and it was very well known that they will ask you the question, "Are you homosexual?" Which they will never ask, "Are you trans?" Because they kind of assume that everyone is a man that walks through those doors. So I was prepared to say yes, that I'm a homosexual, because I just refused to deny it. By then I had made this decision that if anyone were to ask me, I would never deny it. But I didn't quite understand what the repercussions were. I think there were murmurs that, if you do admit to being gay, then you won't be doing some of the more serious, you won't get some of the more serious postings, like the ones that really get you prepared for real war. Right. But at the same time, you kind of knew that, it's not going to be all a bed of roses, like what's going to happen. So what I found out was, after I'd admitted, they actually said you are required to bring one parent in for a chat. So I was forced to come out to one of my parents. Yeah.
So you were forced to come out because you had to do military service.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. And because I had admitted to being quote unquote a homosexual at the time, so I had to bring my father in. Well, obviously to him it was a shock, even though he also said that at the same time, all my life he was trying to butch me up, so it wasn't like it didn't come out of the blue. So that was what happened to me, and it was extremely hard, as anybody who comes out to their parents knows. but I guess I'm glad it forced it to happen.
And of course, we don't want to spoil the film, but a similar thing it does occur in the movie. We are talking about The Inspection, which is in cinemas now. The other theme that I really liked was, and again, this is something that tends to be consistent, doesn't it, in films that deal with gay characters, is the parents' priority to have a conforming masculine son over providing, I suppose, a loving and supportive relationship.
Yeah, it was quite absurd at the end. I guess we shouldn't spoil it too much, but we see the mother at the end, and some of her reactions were so bizarre from seeing sort of her son whom she had written off, right? And he's now sort of marching proud and looking like a handsome, really really strong soldier boy, and then obviously there's a story there, but that we shouldn't talk too much about. No. But it was a surprising response, and it kind of shows the absurdity of how parents think and regard their children. I do love the amount of compassion that the filmmaker puts into all these characters. Yeah. I think if it was directed by other people, his mother wouldn't look quite as kind, that the officers and his sort of bunkmates wouldn't look quite as kind, because the truth is we see some of the really terrible things that they've done.
And I think that's one of the things that I did disappoint me a little bit about the film, was the ending. It was a bit happily ever after for me. I know that, a sense of brotherhood would develop in these sorts of trainings. I assume that would happen, but I don't know if a sense of brotherhood would necessarily overcome homophobia so quickly. So that was something that I just thought at the end, it was a little bit happy ever after. But I did like the way that they portrayed the strength and the resilience that, we develop as we're subjected to bullying, especially, we're in such a down and defeated place. Sometimes we can just somehow harness that, and that was done really well.
Yeah, I think you're right that the end seems strangely optimistic after the kind of very severe trauma that happens throughout the film. But because it's a true story, and because it's made by the person who went through it, and he needs to see his future as being bright and happy. So that there is no way that that he would have ended it at a really dark place, because he needed to move on, and he has moved on. It's been a decade since these events. So it's good to see that he's become, he has an opportunity to become a really, really accomplished film director, and I really hope this film is a start of something really great for many years to come for his career.
And I hope that people in military service, wherever you are, watch it as well.
Yeah. There are the racial elements in there that are important as well, and I think they're done in a more nuanced way. I think the sexuality thing was sort of more front, sort of more upfront, but the racial stuff was kind of more nuanced, and it was good to see. It was good to see how it works. I guess it is true. Like, people can be in those situations anyway. People can be very upfront about that homophobia, but in terms of racism, it kind of manifests in a much more insidious way, as we can see. And I think the film handles really beautifully.
We are chatting to Suzy Rong, and we're talking about The Inspection, which is in cinemas now. Simo from East St Kilda is asking Suzy, were there any repercussions for coming out for your national service?
Well, so what happens is, like I said, I went through 3.5 months of basic military training, but after that, for the rest of your 2.5 years, I was posted. You are given a posting sort of more in accordance with how they think you might be suitable to, how you might be suitable to different postings, I guess. So I had gone to audition for the music and drama company at the Singapore Armed Forces and became a showgirl for 2.5 years.
Love it.
I loved it. It started my life in theatre and performance. But they made it a point. They made it a point to ensure that everyone that goes through national service has the experience of a hardship, and it was not a walk in the park by any means. A lot of the training was harder than they ever needed to be. But I guess because I was courageous enough to come out, that was one of the doors that opened for me. Although that period, the early period of having to go through the screenings and at basic military training, a lot of the officers would have known why that I had admitted to being queer. So there was a lot of sort of, I had to tread very carefully because I kind of felt like they made me feel like they had something on me, and I don't know what it was, but they made me feel like because they knew this secret about me that I just had to be fearful. So that was part of it. And then also having to deal with my father's yes, my father's initial response was to give me a whole heap of books about conversion therapy. So that wasn't very nice at the start. But it forced me to come out to him.
Suzy, is it still a requirement for everyone in Singapore to go through this service?
It is. Everyone born male, assigned male, has to go in for I think it's a little bit shorter now. I think it's 2 years now. It's a rites of passage. Everyone can still have debates about the rights and wrongs of this, but having come out the other side, I can say that there are good things to come out from that experience. But being the kind of person that I am, I think making anything compulsory is not great.
I wonder how they would react now to someone who came out, whether it would be different, whether they would see that the need to out the child to their parent.
Look, this is unverified. From what I've heard, they no longer ask that question, so it's not part of the screening anymore, from what I understand.
Fantastic. All right.
I think times have changed so much that so many people were saying yes, so it became sort of like a difficult thing
everyone to be a showgirl. They'll all be saying it now. Suzy, there'll be an influx of showgirls in the military.
There always was, though.
David from Fitzroy talks about the inspection. We are talking about the inspection in cinemas now with Suzy Wrong. The inspection was a little too precious in car keys for mine. Enough with the degradation, misery, porn. All very worthy, though, and Jeremy Pope gives great face. I do agree. It was very degrading, and yeah, it's a good way to talk about it in some ways. It's like, degradation, misery, porn. But it's true.
That's true. That's a good point.
But it is true. Suzy, what is our homework for next week?
I love the 1988 film Dead Ringers by David Cronenberg, with Jeremy Irons playing a couple of twisted twin doctors. That story is now back as a 6-part series, this time with Rachel Weisz playing the sick siblings. The title remains unchanged, and Dead Ringers is now available to stream on Amazon Prime Video.
Fantastic. Dead Ringers on Amazon Prime. Thank you, Suzy. Great chat.
Thank you, and I'll see you next Tuesday.
See you, Suzy.
Joy Drive on Joy 94.9 FM in Melbourne, Joy on your digital radio, iHeartRadio, TuneIn.com or the Joy app. No matter where you are,